For weeks I have traversed this Maradonian darkness, seeking the light at the end of the tunnel. Aha! Oh, what the hell? Greetings, Nick. I am the good version of you. The good version? Does that mean there's a bad version of me as well? Yeah. Where's he? He's over there. What an asshole. I am here to warn you, Nick. Do not become smitten with the light at the end of the tunnel. It may not be precisely what you seek. What's that supposed to mean? Toodles! Wait! Get back here, you goody, you... Ugh. Well, time to see if the light was worth the trek. Well, folks, the end of the Maradonia saga is upon us, which means the time has come to see if Gloria Tesch has found redemption. To recap, after Dr. Gary Tesch, the mastermind, and I use that term loosely, behind the original Maradonia fiasco passed away, Gloria Tesch pulled the books from circulation and adopted a pseudonym a few years later where she writes to this day, Sofia Nova. Her new author profile not only boasts a new name, but a new backstory as well, one where she changed the age she published Maradonia and the Seven Bridges.
At the age of 15, she has already written 8 novels.
And omitted the, finer details of that book's run. As I've said before, my thoughts on this are mixed. Gloria is not obligated to disclose her past to anyone, and I sympathize with the desire to start over with a clean slate. However, I question the utility of glossing over elements from your past when A, that stuff is easily searchable, and B, the stuff you do recall, you refuse to accurately portray. We're not playing armchair psychologist in this video, however, so I'll try and leave any presumptions out the door. Gloria as Sofia self-published a standalone novel in 2019 called The Secret of Moon Lake, but it's what she did a few years later that we'll focus on. A complete Maradonia reboot, subtitled Guardians of the Portal. A lot is riding on this book, admittedly. It's the first foray into Maradonia without the looming specter of her father, so Gloria was free to imagine it on her own terms. Gloria was also 30 when she published Guardians of the Portal, so there's been several years to refine her craft and prove what she's capable of. If anything, it's nice to know Maradonia as a fantasy world means so much to Gloria that she was willing to revisit it and give it a more dignified treatment. It wasn't just her father pushing her to write. It truly seems to be a part of her. So yes, I did read it. Is it better than Seven Bridges? Yep. But that's an absurdly low bar to hurdle. Is it good? This is actually my second attempt recording this review because the first time my microphone wasn't plugged in all the way, so the audio ended up sounding like this. Well, folks, the end of the Maradonia saga is upon us. This was obviously a result of King Apollyon and the Empire of Evil, which also caused 9/11. So, in a way, my microphone not working and 9/11 are connected somehow. Also, here's audio of my upstairs neighbors being obnoxious. Is a 25-year-old woman What the fuck was that? I hope I just didn't capture audio of a crime happening. Jesus Christ. They also were a result of King Apollyon. A shipwreck leaves 2 teenagers, Maya and Joey Swanson, stranded on the shores of a mysterious island, which they later learn is a fantastical land of Maradonia. There they encounter a kingdom of mermaids who inform them they're 2 children from a hallowed prophecy destined to unite Maradonia, and maybe revitalize an underwater portal that's long been inactive. But the forces of evil wish to conquer the mermaids' kingdom and claim the portal for themselves, as well as a US military expedition who wants it for their own purposes. Can Maya and Joey realize their destinies and bring peace and prosperity to the land of Maradonia? This review will contain spoilers, by the way. So from that summary alone, you know things are different this time around. Maradonia, at least a part of it, is reimagined as an island somewhere off the coast of the Pacific called Husario, an enchanted landmass that's only appeared on ancient charts, yet cannot be located by modern means. I guess it's one of those you gotta be lost to find it kind of places. The setup is also dramatically different. Maya and Joey are returning home via cargo ship after visiting a faraway family. That's not really explained either, until a combination storm and supernatural attack sinks them and strands them on Maradonian shores. The only reason for them crossing the Pacific Ocean via cargo ship is that their father was good friends with the captain and they wanted to experience a seafaring journey, but to me it sounds more like Gloria's trying to emulate Life of Pi, which if that is the case, it's totally fine to pay tribute to other stories, but maybe not to the point where it conflicts with believability. I love Life of Pi, by the way. It's like at least top 3, if not my favorite book of all time. Maradonia itself is given a little more substance, although it still plays it safe. 7 kingdoms, 3 of which are named. Awanata, the mermaid realm, Gorgonia, the volcanic realm of the giants, and the Dark Realm, only slightly less silly than the Evil Empire. The majority of the book takes place in or around Awanata, so Maya and Joey see jungles and coastland and lagoons, all of which sparkles and shines or glows in the dark. So magic, such fantasy. And the deeper they push into Maradonia, the more the, shall I say, Teschisms come out. One reason I was excited to read this book is to see if any elements from Seven Bridges carried over, and boy oh boy, it did not disappoint. Maya is largely the same, as well as Joey, who still spouts leaderific platitudes when the situation demands it. Granted, it's not nearly as obnoxious here, but you still have to wonder if Joey has a quote book in his back pocket. Thankfully, none of his quotes concern getting yo ass over the damn fence. They do encounter Oraculus, who's a hermetic wizard, and Arabella, renamed Munasa, who largely serve as cameos. Libertine the Dove returns, and no, I still don't know why Gloria named her that. The evil fairies also appear, and they're renamed Andromeda, Lilith, Moi. Alright, Gloria, you almost had another Aerith and Bob moment. Do not test me. The Mermaid Kingdom is once again ruled by Queen Aqua Marisha, which, I'm sorry, is still a stupid name. The other mermaids have names like Florina, Persolia, Emilia, Crystalline. That's an adjective. But the stupidest name of all belongs to the cargo ship that sank in the first place. The Unstoppable Barracuda. It's ironic because it got stopped. Or something. Speaking of which, it's established that the mermaids are a fierce warrior race who sink any vessel that comes their way without asking questions, which is how Maya and Joey got shipwrecked in the first place. The mermaid portions verge on being twee in that fantasy world kind of way, like Maya gets a pet dolphin friend. So that injection of harshness was a nice reprieve. King Apollyon is renamed to King Palazar, but other than the name changes, the Dark Realm is still about as one-dimensional as the Seven Bridges Evil Empire. The villains, again referred to as the Principalities, have no personality beyond evil and occasionally angry. Even the movie tried establishing that Apollyon was a Lucifer stand-in corrupted by pride, but we get practically no hint of a backstory with any of them here. Feels like a wasted opportunity, unless it'll be covered in future entries. Bafflingly, Gloria invokes the Commander Justin subplot from Seven Bridges once again, this time portrayed with the giants of Gorgonia. The new Justin is named Cephace, and once again he's part of the Black Tribe. Oh, for God's sake. Of all the things to carry over from Seven Bridges, that should have been the last. Or not at all. At least they're giants, so maybe their skin is literally black, like obsidian. It's never explained. I don't know why she was so insistent on retaining that element. So that's where the narrative similarities between Guardians of the Portal and Seven Bridges end. Otherwise, much of the book focuses on Maya and Joey learning about the Mermaid's Kingdom, the war between Awanata and the Dark Realm, and the mystery of the dormant portal which the mermaids guard. It's technically an improvement from the mermaid subplot in Seven Bridges, which felt superfluous to say the least, and it makes the overall story feel more focused. The battles themselves do get a bit graphic. The imagery of dead, bloody mermaids floating at the surface is kinda grim, but is filtered through the book's overall saccharine tone, which may be fine for younger readers, but anyone older than, say, 12 could definitely tolerate more. One thing about this book you might have noticed is that the illustrations come back. Some of them are unfamiliar to me, so they may be original or from other Maradonia books, but most of them were carried over from Seven Bridges. I get the impression that certain scenes were written simply to reincorporate the drawings, such as this toad, who remember is Oraculus in Seven Bridges, but here is just a random toad they encounter in the swamp. Other times it causes problems, such as the snake, Munasa, a single character who is depicted with 2 drawings of snakes. And not only do the snakes look completely different from each other, but in Seven Bridges, this snake was meant to be Arabella, and this snake was meant to be some other snake they encountered in the jungle. As a seasoned Seven Bridges scholar, I'm offended they tried to slip that past me. There's this one drawing that looks like futuristic technology. There's nothing like it in the surrounding text. What is it? Why is it here? And this drawing is just the cover art to Gold of Ophir. Weak. The writing style is not great. The aforementioned saccharine tone means things tend to rush past in an underdeveloped voice. The narration just flat out reveals character motivations. There are a lot of repeated words, and although the dialogue is more succinct than Seven Bridges, many of the characters still sound the same. You've got mermaids, demons, giants, dragons, yet they all compose themselves and react to things like they're just a bunch of humans. For example, in one scene, Maya and Joey encounter dragons on their way to interface with the giants, and after a brief misunderstanding, all of a sudden the dragons are giving them rides and delivering exposition and gifting them scales that morph into suits of armor. There's nothing about the way they speak or act that suggests these are ancient, battle-hardened, fire-breathing monsters. As far as the story is concerned, they're just another fantasy element that aids Maya and Joey in their conflict. Another missed opportunity for characterization and world building. That said, I wouldn't call this a difficult book. It's easy to read and structured pleasantly, much more like an actual novel than Seven Bridges was. I never felt lost or overwhelmed or even really bored. I didn't dread returning to it because, despite everything, it's still a smooth and straightforward experience. Unfortunately, the writing and narrative elements combine into a host of story problems that made the book frustrating in other ways. There's a whole entire subplot involving a US military expedition to secure the portal, and it's pretty much pointless. Having a side plot largely disconnected from the main plot is okay, but it ought to impact the overall story or reveal new information, and this subplot does none of that. Its cast is pretty stupid too. Their chief of security, Sergeant Ilona, is a 25-year-old woman who's adept at hand-to-hand combat and throwing knives, like she can pin a fly to a wall without killing it. And she's introduced just kicking the shit out of people on the tarmac, and later does that thing where she sticks a knife in between people's faces just because she can. Look how badass I am, I could stick a knife right in between people's faces and... What? Section 8? No. If I wanted to kill him, I would have. Gordon Huang is a young scientist who is on the cargo ship with Maya and Joey, but he's rescued and recruited on the mission because he tracked down the portal's location. He and Ilona develop a brief romance and at one point conspire to secure the portal for themselves, only for that plot point to drop almost immediately and Gordon to become a full-blown villain at the end. Like, joining the bad guy in the epilogue levels of full-blown villainy. The only commonality between them is that they feel their fathers are inferior to them. Did this book get meta all of a sudden? There's this other member of the team, Lieutenant Krieger, who serves no purpose up until they actually meet the mermaids, when for no reason he turns into a cartoonish trigger-happy asshole and starts shooting them. Then after this, his dialogue becomes very, Australian. Granted, most Australians I've known are complete assholes, so maybe Gloria's onto something. And in the end, after they've terrorized the Maradonian wildlife and gunned down a few mermaids to secure the portal, their story ends with them leaving the portal alone after much debate. Right, because the US military is regularly deterred by much debate. Some other dumb things that took me out of it: the romance subplot between Joey and Morgana the mermaid returns. She's aged down to match him, thank God. But she does something just as bad, if not worse. Her love for Joey is so strong, she basically imprisons him in an undersea cave and plots to force-feed him a magical root that will turn him into a merman over the course of 3 incredibly painful days. Thankfully, Maya catches on and is able to intervene, but as Morgana is being accosted by the Mermaid Queen, what is Joey's response? Nobody is perfect, including me, and I forgive her. What? She tried to transmogrify you against your will via a process that, by the book's admission, could have killed you, and your response is, nobody's perfect? Nope. String that bitch by the gills and hang her in the sun to dry. And then there's the matter of this portal, a magical gateway that can transport the user to any other portal present in the world, of which there are several unnamed and undiscovered. Awanada's portal has been dormant for hundreds of years, and the mermaids are desperate for a way to revitalize it. And then comes Maya and Joey, who reawaken it by swimming around it 7 times. Because 7 is a magical number in Maradonia. I don't know what's more stupid. The fact that not one mermaid figured it out on their own after hundreds of years, or the fact that Maya and Joey, 2 humans who've been there for like a day, were able to figure it out after like 5 minutes of staring at it. So yeah, unfortunately, this book's many contrived and nonsensical elements overshadowed everything else. On one hand, it's nice to see Maradonia fully realized as a fantasy realm on Gloria's terms, and it's good to know that Gloria is capable of telling a composite story and that her skills have objectively improved over time. But on the other hand, being better than 7 Bridges does not require much, and making a book that's at least competent is the bare minimum I expect. And while it is an easy, inoffensive read, the aforementioned issues keep it from being good. So while Guardians of the Portal is a good ending for the greater Maradonia saga, it's certainly far from the best. It would be awesome if subsequent entries prove that Gloria is continuing to learn and grow as a writer. But for that, I think she needs a rigorous editor to help refine her prose, inject some much-needed grit, and really make her setting stand out. Because there's hundreds of other fantasy series out there that are simply better in every way. In its current iteration, Maradonia as a fantasy realm has an originality problem in that it doesn't stand out from or improve upon others like it. If you don't give readers a reason to become invested, they're simply not going to stick with it. Another thing to note is that this was published through Mascot Books, a vanity publisher, meaning that as long as Gloria was able to pay, the publisher was willing to print. Editorial standards aren't exactly an issue when you can procure a check. If you're curious about what's become of Maradonia, Guardians of the Portal might be an interesting study. But by itself, as a middle-grade fantasy novel, it's simply not up to scratch, and on those grounds, I cannot recommend it. And just to round out the Sofia Nova catalog, I also read her other novel, The Secret of Moon Lake. The Secret of Moon Lake is about a 14-year-old boy named Sam Lawrence who discovers a magical medallion in a nearby lake, and the supernatural history surrounding it, involving curses and mermaids and Viking history. And no, I couldn't tell you what Gloria Tesch's fascination with mermaids is about. Maybe they're just pretty, I don't know. At around 200 pages and with somewhat large font, it's a very quick read. And I'm gonna be real with you guys, it's not terrible. I wouldn't even call it bad. Okay, there's still problems, such as weird phrasings and overuse of exclamation points, people not talking like people, some historical and geographical errors, and the narration over-explaining obvious things. But I think being disconnected from Maradonia really benefited this story. There's a cozy small town with a secret atmosphere, and choosing to prioritize magical realism over high fantasy allowed for greater emphasis on character moments and tone building and other subtleties largely absent in Maradonia. The story is nothing amazing, and there's some contrivance and long-windedness, but compared to the Maradonia entries, it is fairly grounded, and there's enough twists and turns to suggest Gloria has some understanding of how to play with the narrative. In fact, I think with some revisions, and again a rigorous editor, Gloria could have a neat little paranormal, quasi-fantasy middle-grade novel on her hands. Normally I would say if you know someone younger in your life who's getting into longer chapter books, The Secret of Moon Lake might be fun. Unfortunately, as this was self-published, there are a number of typos and formatting errors that I simply cannot put upon young readers in good faith. So, in its current state, I wouldn't. Like, if you're gonna write for children, at least make sure the grammar and presentation is proper. You don't want to set a bad impression for kids trying to get into reading. But I think there's a lot more potential and quality latent in Secret of Moon Lake compared to Maradonia, and someone like Gloria might not like to hear that, but based on what we've seen, supernatural magical realism seems to be her strength, as opposed to high fantasy. Will she pursue this direction? Well, Guardians of the Portal is book 1 in a series, and it seems Gloria's back writing again, so let's just hope book 2 is better. And that was the story of Team Tesch and Maradonia. A long, insane, often hilarious, sometimes depressing story. At least up to this point. I think I've said enough about Gloria and Gary, but one thing to remember is that for all her faults, Gloria was a product of her upbringing, one wrought with false promises, an unstable home life, exploitation, and deception that left her unequipped to deal with the harsh realities of life. Does that excuse her transgressions, past and present? No. It just explains them. But I think we can agree that, despite her current embellishments and the quality of her work, this was far from a bad ending. Even though I was critical towards Guardians of the Portal, it's still a big step up from Seven Bridges, and it could have been much worse. I think that has to count for something. And any scenario where you wind up in a better place and reclaim something that was once yours is worth commendation. And who knows? I keep calling this an ending, but in time, it could herald a new beginning.